Hi, thanks for tuning in. I wanted to continue on with the series on feelings because there's so much to explore in that realm. Feelings has become sort of a recurring theme in my life, and I've learned a lot because of it. Maybe someday I'll go into the backstory as to why. Um, I think feelings are especially important to talk about now because of what's happening in the world and how difficult it has made it for people to really find some positivity and meaning in their life when so many options have become constrained and so many doors have become shut. It's really tragic and something that I've been speaking up about and against frequently throughout my videos. So what do? We have our feelings, and it seems like lately they just bring us more trouble than they're worth. There's probably a lot of people out there who wish they could just turn their feelings off and not feel. I'm of the opinion that we need to become more sensitive. That the more sensitive we are, I realize this is very counter-cultural, but I think the more sensitive we become, we can create a better world. But not sensitive, how do I put this? Not sensitive for ourselves, but sensitive in terms of the senses, in terms of picking up on things, sensing things, feeling things, seeing things, hearing things, understanding things. I think our antenna need to become sharpened and be able to see things more crisply and clearly. That's the kind of sensitive. I mean, not the kind of sensitive where you just get offended by everything and you feel that everything should revolve around you as if you were the center of the universe. No, not that kind of sensitivity. I think we need to become more sensitive. I don't know how else to say it, but just be able to pick up on things more, more aware, more awake. More considerate, more understanding. But still, we're stuck with our feelings and dealing with the fact that we feel put upon by the world and we feel the pressures on us and we feel the difficulty on us and the options and doors closing on us. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with those feelings? Well, I think first of all we need to understand them, which is why I've been doing this series. And one of the things I talked about in the past was that feelings are tools of cognition. Ayn Rand famously said they're not tools of cognition, but in my last video I made the case for why they are and why they're incredibly important for us to understand something about ourselves as we relate to the world. As creatures, as sensitive creatures, human beings are very negatively focused. So when it comes to feelings, we tend to store negative feelings. We don't tend to store positive ones. Positive feelings are feelings that we experience in the moment, and they elevate us and they make us feel good. But nobody has ever been positively traumatized. All of trauma everything that gets seared in our emotional memory is more often than not very negative. And so I think that because of our evolution, having primed us to be very conscious, especially of negative things in our environment, that we have been sort of conditioned through evolution to be negatively focused. So that if something negative happens, we can learn from it and avoid the same trap the next time. I think it's unfortunate, but because we are living creatures that have evolved over many thousands of years, negativity has become the emotion that is most default and is most likely to be stored, and it's the stickiest thing in terms of feelings. So if you have something positive happen in a day and then something negative happens that same day, the thing that's going to stick onto you is the negative one. And unfortunately, this is just because of the way we've been designed. So the less sticky you can be to negative things happening in your life, fundamentally, the more free you're going to be from those negative feelings, which you might call that happiness, or it could just be contentment or lack of negative emotion. So I think it's important to be aware of that if you are finding yourself being somehow obsessed with negative things, that is not unnormal. That is perfectly normal. I think in terms of emotions, human beings are like batteries that are designed to store negative feelings, unfortunately. And I think a lot of spirituality and things of that nature are fundamentally trying to liberate us from these shackles that our physicality has imprisoned us with. And enlightenment, in my opinion, the word enlightenment, I don't associate it with light. I associate it with getting lighter and letting go of things. And so the more you can make yourself slippery to negative things in your life, the better off you'll be. So understanding that is a good place to start, and knowing that negative things being you feeling like you're carrying all of this negative memory and these traumas and these negative things with you, and you wish you could just let them go, is a normal feeling to be having. But it's important to know that you are playing a role in holding on to those things, and you can let go. And if you don't, what ends up happening is they end up generating the lens through which you see the world. So if you are carrying emotions having to do with jealousy or a feeling of lack in yourself, then you're going to see through a lens that will make you see other people as adversaries to you, or you'll be comparing what you have to what somebody else has, and that is all going to create a feeling of jealousy and anxiety and discontentment. And if any of those feelings become heightened, like a feeling of anxiety, then you're going to start looking at the world as everything or anything that could be a mild threat as being a major threat. And it's just going to produce even more anxiety. So it's really, really important for anyone's mental health to let go of a lot of these feelings, because most of them aren't really serving us. We have been designed emotionally to live in a world where there's threats lurking in every dark corner of a jungle. And so you are now living probably one of the safest lives of any human being in history. And so all of that evolutionary training that your emotional battery has received is being used on things that it's really not designed for. Hopefully, being aware of this can help you see what's going on more critically and consciously letting go of it. My sense is that there is a lot of negatively charged individuals in our society. There are a lot of batteries that are fully charged up, human batteries, and it's leading to a lot of discontentment, of course, with the world, and a very negative and pessimistic outlook of the future. And I just want to try to bring attention to this. Unfortunately, when you're in a state of sadness, in a state of discontentment, you often don't know why. And since that becomes the lens through which you see the world, you will look at the world and find reasons within the world for why you feel this way. Now, that said, there are some times when negative feelings are very legitimate for you to be having. I'm sure you can think of many examples. From my experience, I've noticed that discontentment and feelings of sadness and dissatisfaction can come whenever there's a dissonance between your potential and where you currently are at. I think subconsciously we know that we're capable of so much more than what we're doing currently. And that can be a huge source of sadness. I mean, just imagine if you were a seed that had the potential to blossom into this beautiful flower or a fruitful tree, and there you were sitting on the concrete, not being planted in the proper soil and being given the nourishment that you needed in order to fulfill your full potential. I think unfortunately there are a lot of people who are in that situation now where they're just not in the right environment for them to become what they know deep inside they can become. And this can often be corrected by simply putting yourself in the right environment or taking yourself out of the wrong environment. Each person has to figure that out for themselves and really look deep within themselves and figure out what is it that I want to blossom into and what are the variables that I need in order for me to manifest that. Let's imagine, for example, that cars could reproduce, let's say, kind of like the movie Cars, that they could have little children. And you have a Jeep that is living in a place where everything is perfectly paved and there's no bumps anywhere, and everything is carefully regulated, and so that you can only go a certain speed, and there's a stoplight every block. This Jeep entity is probably going to be a little bit miserable because that's not the kind of environment that this Jeep was designed for. That Jeep was designed to be off-road in bumpy terrain, going through dirt and mud, And that's the environment that the Jeep, this hypothetical Jeep with feelings, would feel more themselves in. Or let's say a race car that was raised in such an environment. That race car is really not going to feel right about the world unless they're put on perfectly paved tarmac on a race car track. I think human beings are kind of like that. A lot of us are built for certain things, and we're living a life that does just not jive with our biology and our own proclivities and interests and things that we want to do. I've talked many times in my videos about how human beings are beautifully and incredibly diverse, and how the world is increasingly narrowing down the kind of human being that it allows to participate in the economic exchange of life, which is not something I'm happy about, and it brings me a lot of frustration and sadness. But it's up to each of us to make sure that we do our best to live the life that is most in accordance with who we feel that is in accordance with what is most true to us as individuals. Within reason, of course. Trying to figure that out and having it somehow align with things that work in society and in culture is a tricky thing for sure. But I think oftentimes people don't realize that that is even a task they need to figure out. They just have this feeling of, oh, this doesn't feel right. Why doesn't it feel right? And it's because you're a Jeep trying to live on a racetrack, or the other way around. You're a race car trying to live out in muddy and bumpy terrain. So if that's the situation, you can either try to undergo a complete transformation of yourself so that you can fit in with the environment that you're in, or you can try to see if there's somewhere in your environment where you might be a better fit, or that might have the kind of soil that would give you the nutrition that you need to sprout and blossom and become what you were meant to become. So feelings, those negative feelings, can sometimes be very instructive in helping us decide what we need to do with our life in order to find happiness and joy and a sense of meaning and purpose. So I thought I'd share that with you. I hope that was helpful to some of you out there. If you have any thoughts, please leave them in the comments. I would love to hear from you.